Welcome to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
I welcome you to the fourth week in our series entitled Beyond Darkness, the Human Response. In our past programs, as you know, we've been dealing with a number of subtopics, and today on the fourth program, our topic will be the social impact of television. We're most fortunate to have on today's program Marvin Smith, who is currently an associate professor of radio and television at Eastern Washington University, following 11 years on the faculty at the University of Arizona in Tucson. While in Arizona, our guest directed the Southwest Creative Film Center, and he served as executive director for numerous animated children's films and formed policy recommendations on the role of public radio and television for children. Our guest is a graduate of Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas, and also the University of Austin. Mr. Smith has produced and or written more than 250 TV programs and is the author of a book entitled Radio, Television, Cable, A Telecommunications Approach. Mr. Smith, it's a pleasure to have you on our program, and we look forward to the interview, and we thank you for taking this time to be with our students on campus and with our program.
Well, I'm honored by the invitation from the university and from the students to be here. I'm very, very flattered.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to welcome to the panel today to question our guests. First of all, Mr. Steve Schink, who is the Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College, and Glenn Walker, an attorney and the former prosecuting attorney of Kootenai County. I shall ask Steve Schink to commence the questioning.
Mr. Smith, I was lucky enough to get to hear at least a portion of your presentation to our students. And one of the things that you mentioned there, one of your first remarks, in fact, struck me because it's true, I think, not only in the television industry but also in the print media, which is part of my background. You said that at its fundamental level, television is a business. I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit and tell us something about the implication of that fact.
Well, people like to think that what television is about is delivering programs to people. The business part of television has very, very little to do with that. The business part of television is delivering audiences to advertisers. Now, I hasten to add, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, it's in the best tradition of the American free enterprise system. But what that means is that if you think of television as a manufacturing plant that is manufacturing product, the product is audience. What we use to attract audience is the programming. The programming is important, but the audience and the size of that audience is most important, at least as far as broadcast television is concerned. The implications are that television will be as good as the audience will allow it to be. Television programs have to be designed so that they attract a large mass audience in the commercial broadcast television business. And so you're going to provide people with what the majority want to see. On the cable television side, the economic exchange is different. Basic program services are providing audiences to advertisers, ESPN, USA. But the pay services, Movie Channel, Showtime, are providing programs to people. So the programs have to be structured in such a way that they appeal to people. What appeals to people? Well, basically what they see in their movie theaters, so you have a lot of movies, and also what they have learned to see on commercial television, which is entertainment. So really both systems mean that you're going to get sort of the same programming and the same quality of programming, no matter which economic system you're using.
On the outside looking in, we see huge salaries to stars of popular TV series. We read about fantastic amounts of money involved with putting together deals to broadcast the Olympics, for instance. So I think there's this image in most people's minds as television as a fantastically wealthy business. As businesses and relative to one another and on their own, how healthy are the commercial networks? How healthy is cable television?
Well, you're right in separating the two. I want to go back. Okay, this is going to be kind of a lead-in to the answer. The television business in general is very, very healthy. Profit margins at local stations and at the networks, broadcast stations, are down because of audience fragmentation, primarily because of cable. You read about the large salaries being paid to stars, and those are not very many. And they'll tell you very, very quickly that they're worth every penny, and probably they are. The salaries in television generally are not terribly high when compared with other industries. The average life of a programming executive at a network is slightly over 1 year. They may get paid $250,000, $300,000 a year, but then once that's done, they're going to be consulting, and we all know what that means. The payments that have been paid for the Olympics and for Major League Baseball are really very interesting. What the people who are doing that, ABC, CBS, are gambling on is that they are going to attract substantial numbers of audiences, and that they are buying those in today's dollars. When you discount those, when you look at the baseball contract 1990, you look at the Olympics on down the road, you know, you're looking at dollars that are 2 and 3 and 4 years old. Okay. The other thing is that those events are going to happen. You don't have to deal with whims and caprices of stars and creative people. So while on the surface it seems like a lot of money, it's really a fairly conservative investment. I mean, when you think about it. The cable industry is extremely profitable. The cable industry is obscenely profitable. Okay, and let me give you an example. It costs on the average of about $500 to hook up a household to cable. That's in terms of all the capital investment that you have to make in physical plant in bringing them in. The cost of operation of cable is actually very low. The cable people tell you that it's high, but it's really not. It's very, very low. So you're talking about $500 a household. Cable systems right now are selling in multiples from $2,400 to $2,700 per hooked up household. Now, anybody that is going to pay that kind of money, that kind of multiple of what it costs to get those people in the system, know how profitable it is, which is the reason why cable stocks do so well, and why they're very, very speculative, but they are paying off. So cable, very, very profitable. Broadcast television used to be extremely profitable, is getting less so.
Glenn Walker.
Professor Smith, I too was at your lecture this morning to the students, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I guess maybe your main presentation was pointing out the overwhelming dominance in our society of television, and you also talked a great deal about the lack of quality, or perceived lack of quality. I'm leading up to a point. Our society, our culture, is made up of thousands, even millions of things. But you made a very bold statement. You said that television is not a part of public discourse. It is public discourse. And even bolder, it's not a part of culture, but television is culture. Mm-hmm. Now, if it is culture, then every part of society ought to be interested and involved in what television is doing. Do we have a severe problem in our culture with television?
Yeah, I think we have a major problem with television. And what I try to point out and stimulate to get people to thinking about is that the widespread acceptance of television in the United States, and the fact that it is the dominant communication medium, has done a couple of things. One, it's tended to redefine other media, particularly newspapers and print, that we deal with print now in a much different way than we used to. The other thing is that watching television does not require the same set of skills and the same discipline as reading does. That reading requires we remain in one place. It requires we have certain symbol recognition. It requires that we remember things. If we lose print, we lose our ability to really criticize and reason and structure reality rhetorically. Television is a world of images. Television is a series of shots, a series of images that are all put together outside of any historical context, outside of any educational context. They just exist. And we don't interpret television, we respond to it. And I think that's very, very dangerous. You're an attorney. Imagine what it would be like to practice television. You would be practicing television. Practice law, okay, without language, without exposition, without words. You couldn't do it. I mean, law is something that has derived from the expository process. Television has nothing to do with that. Television is pictures. When you present a case, when you write a brief, you write it in words. You use rhetoric, you use logic. When you develop a television program, you string images together and are looking for emotional responses from audience. What this means is we don't think the way we used to. What it means is that if you come from a print culture, you really don't think at all. And I think that's dangerous.
You know, we're living through people who are living today who are my age. By the time their life runs its normal course, they will have seen the world's population increase from about 2 billion to about 10 billion. They will have lived through probably the most significant revolution, that is communications and technology, that the world has ever seen. An entire world will be changed. To some, they would say, turned upside down. Now, if you were in a position at your point, at your time in life, so that you were the czar of this radio television industry that's so important, what would you do? What kind of things should be done, and what should the role of government be?
Well, I'm not sure that the responsibilities lies with the television industry solely. We might label television saying television can be hazardous to your mental health and your intellect. That would certainly help. The problem is that as a society, we don't recognize what media do. We don't recognize what strengths and weaknesses are of media. And the solution, I think, lies in education. The solution starts in school. The solution starts with demanding that children in school can handle expository problems, that they can read and write and think, critical thinking skills. But, this is not the first time this has happened. The United States, in my view, is going through the third great revolution of Western civilization. The first was when we moved from an oral to a written culture and adopted the alphabet. The second was with the introduction of the printing press, which allowed us to store knowledge, and we could now deal with formal critical systems, and we could bring back past knowledges and look them up. It establishes the concept of stare decisis in law, which is extremely important. And as a lawyer, you can certainly appreciate that when you can go back and look at cases and look at legal reasoning and it's written down, we don't have as much dispute about meaning. We have disputes enough, but so we're going through the third great revolution. The problem is that we're not equipped to go through it, and education is the answer. That is, we have to know what we can do with print media, what its strengths are, what we can do with television, and allow television to do what it does best, and that's entertain. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Professor Smith, there's some sub-areas that we'd like to get into, and of course different aspects of television is directed to different audiences, and one of your areas of expertise is dealing with children programming, and there's a certain amount of television, of course, is directed at that audience. What is, in your viewpoint, the social impact upon children in recent years and what they're getting from television? What do you think is good about it? What is bad? And maybe compare what happens on public television with what happens on commercial television's relation to children.
I think that we have a real problem in children's television, and the problem is not in the entertainment programming. I think the problem is in the so-called quality educational programming. What we've done as a society is we have said, okay, television is with us and it's here. Okay, it's a reality. So rather than fight it, we're going to go with the flow. So we're going to use television to educate. And so what we've done is we've taken hundreds of millions of dollars, taxpayer money, and we've put it into research, and we've developed television programs that prepare kids to go to school. Teaches them to read, teaches them letter recognition, and we have done it in the way that television does it best. That is, short, non-contextual message units. Short attention span, children don't have to sit very long. They can sort of over a period of time get this collage. No context, no exposition, no linkages between images, pure information. And we prepare them to learn like this. And they can do that very well. They get into the first grade, they get into school, and they've been learning from television, and all of a sudden, they don't learn from television anymore. We prepare kids to go to school by working with them in one medium that demands a completely different mindset, put them in school and demand a completely different set of skills. We demand that they sit still, that they read, that they write, that they deal in an organized manner with words. And children can't do that. Children can't respond to that because their earliest perceptual experiences are with television. And we've told them that's okay. Oh, that's a problem. Okay? Public television, Sesame Street, and a lot of the experiments that have been done to enhance learning in children are actually resulting in the opposite. They're teaching kids how not to learn using expository forms.
Is this a problem that's more concentration in the United States where television is available to everyone, and how does it affect us in the international sphere in the future? Are children in this country having less experience than children in either Europe or Asia to deal with a much more structured learning process and the written word?
A structured thinking process. I mean, that's the important thing. Is it's a critical thinking mode. The ability to go into reality or to look at reality and structure it and make interpretations of that reality. Do we have a larger problem in this country? Yeah, I think we do. And the reason is that this is the only country in which television is as dominant a cultural form as in the United States. The average home in the United States watches television a little over 7 hours a day. The average person watches television a little over 3 hours and 20 minutes. It's scary. It really is. When you think about what not only what people are watching and the content, but the way the thought processes and the critical processes in television evolve. And entertainment programming is one form, but news programming has the same problem. That is, in a news program we get events, they have no context. But the direction of news, television news, is to entertain. So we're dependent upon the visual image. If the story is not visual, it's not news. But we can only give it a certain amount of time. We link those stories with nothing. There's no context, no setup, no nothing. We have 45 seconds of an event that happens somewhere. That's an event. The next event may be the selling of soap, the selling of deodorant. We may go from Afghanistan to downtown Spokane. What's the linkage? People say this is that. We end up cubbyholing information. And that's not very good. I think it's not very good, and I'm in the business.
Thank you. Steve Sheen.
You've already mentioned the effect that television has on children and learning. What about the criticism of television as a medium that is dominated by violence and sex? Is that justified?
No. I don't think it is dominated by violence and sex. There's a lot of violence on television, and there's probably more and more sexually explicit situations. I don't think television is any different from a lot of other media. When you look at newspapers in the early 19th century, from about 1820, a little bit prior to the invention of the telegraph, you find that there's an evolution in the print media, from print media being sort of dealing in political discourse and ideas and sort of traditional rhetorical structure, to newspapers more and more dealing with sex and violence. I mean, Rupert Murdoch is not a new phenomenon. I mean, we have the penny press, the New York Sun, and et cetera. Television's preoccupation or use of sex and violence is a reflection of what's going on in society. But sex and violence makes good television. It's visually exciting. It moves, it changes. There's a lot of different ways to portray it. And so sex and violence is good television.
I've got to feed you a line here and follow up on this question.
Sure.
Is the criticism of television we've just discussed any more justified than criticism of other media? For instance, you always hear parents say, "Get away, turn the television set off, go read a book."
Sure.
Are the books by and large any better?
No, I mean, going to a bookstore. 50,000 titles, 50,000 plus titles are published in the United States every year. The vast majority of those are no better or worse than what you see on television. Problem is, we've asked television to do things it's not equipped to do, and that is to engage in political discourse. We've asked television to be an expository medium, and it's not an expository medium. It's an image medium. Political behavior and the lifeblood of the nation as far as our society, as far as what goes on in government, quality of life, okay, are still print-dominated issues. They're not television issues. We bring them on television, we show images, and there's no thought, no connection, no discourse. And that was the point that I was trying to make today. It's not the fault of television that it's being asked to do something it can't do. I think it's valiant that television tries to do the things that it does, but it's not equipped very well to do it, and we shouldn't ask it to do it. Television is a good entertainment medium. Newspapers should desire that, but they're trying to be entertaining and not engage in public discourse.
Glenn Walker.
Well, we've already seen the discussion of the incredible dominance of television, but in every part of this country, the dominance is increasing even. In England today, they have 4 channels total, but an Australian entrepreneur is investing $200 million to bring them 4 more channels by satellite. So all over the world, this increase is coming about. You said today that we have an increase in illiteracy and a decrease in public discourse as the effect of this dominance of television. Am I hearing you right when you're basically saying that we cannot expect television to educate us and to improve our public discourse, that we simply are going to have a reversal, that TV should not be doing these things?
No, I think we need to stop asking TV to do it. I think what we need to start asking is that people be able to read and write. The quality of public discourse, the quality of our conversation about the direction where we are going as a society is dependent upon the literacy level in our society. The United States was never more literate in its entire history than it was before the Revolutionary War. And we're not talking only about people being able to read and write. We're talking about people who are actual people of letters. I mean, we're talking about people who could think, people who had a philosophical point of view and could discuss that intelligently. I'm certainly not suggesting that in a generation this country is going to go back to that. But what we have done is we've lost even the ability to deal in thought systems that are print thought systems that are important to the continuity of this nation. What is happening is we are dividing up, I believe, into 2 very, very different societies. There is the society of television, and television people who want images and respond to images. And then we have a group that know how to use those images, but also know how to think and how to discuss. And we are talking here about a split that's getting wider and wider unless we do something about it. The future of public discourse in this country, if we continue on the road that we're going, is going to be more and more of the type of campaign and the type of discussions that we had in the last presidential elections. I personally think that's too bad.
What should be the role of television in teaching values to our children?
Well, You know, I'm pretty undecided. Okay, there are values inherent in every image. There are values inherent in every prose passage. I mean, there are certain assumptions and there are certain values expressed, and you can't get away from that. You can't say, well, television, because it's an entertainment medium, should express any value it wants to. It probably should, but we have to be able to recognize that as a value. Values and recognition of values is not a function of image making. It's a function of expository literacy. So in order even to recognize the values, we have to be literate, at least in a typographical expository way. So, you know, television is going to express values no matter what. What we have to do is educate people to recognize those values as values.
Professor Smith, I want to make a pessimistic statement and get your reaction to it. It seems to me that from your comments and others in our country, and observation, that television is so dominant that isn't it possible that the educational system of this country is fighting a losing battle, that the educators or even the parents that cooperate, that the children are so enticed by television, and also in the political arena. We have learned so much in the last few years about political campaigns, presidential campaigns in particular, that it's the bites and the image, and it's not the substance that prevails. Is there any way of really going back to what you said about an earlier history and having this dialogue that is now missing from both the political arena and the educational system?
You know, I don't know. And I suppose what I'm arguing for is not universal literacy, but perhaps majority literacy, at least as far as print media is concerned. There are some portions of the educational system in which reading and writing and traditional expository values and means of expression and ideas are a part. They're generally not a part of the public school system, generally. There are exceptions. What we can hope for is that we have alternatives, is that children and parents are given alternatives to go into situations which are not television dominated. And that doesn't mean there's a television set in the classroom. That means that the mentality and the curriculum is a curriculum of image, non-context, feel good. As long as the student is happy, everything's all right. And we can hope that the opposite is true in some settings. As long as that happens, as long as we have a cadre of people, expository survivalists, so to speak, they're going to be in leadership positions.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're out of time. I wish we could continue that off the air. I'm sure we can. I hate to say that to the viewers, but again, on behalf of the panel and the staff, you have been most informative, and it's been intellectually very stimulating to have you here, and you've been a great contributor to what we're trying to do with our program.
Well, again, I'm very, very honored that North Idaho College would invite me. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've enjoyed our program, and I would like to invite you to be with us again next week when we continue this series. And again, we wish to thank the Convocations Committee at North Idaho College. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.